Happy Thursday, y'all. We are back with another edition of DNVR Rams Live. I'm Justin Michael, a.k.a. J-Mike. I've got Andre, the man, the myth, the legend, Simone with me. We've got a lot to dive into. There was actually some breaking CSU news while we were live for the draft pod an hour ago.
Man. You got to tell me about it. I was hosting that.
I'll be getting into a lot of that over the next couple of days. A nice little recruiting win for CSU men's basketball. They pick up Jalen Crocker Johnson out of Arkansas, Little Rock, OVC Freshman of the Year. Basically a replacement for Jill Scott. I'll have to really dive into his game tonight. I'll actually do a pod where I go really in-depth on Ethan Morton, the Purdue transfer, Kashawn Williams, the NIU transfer, who I think has a really high ceiling in terms of being an effective scorer for this team. Before we get into everything, before we talk draft fits, I'm going to pick your brain on Mo Kamara falling to the 5th round. I want to talk about Dallin Holker with the Saints, all that. We'll do a little fun draft at the end where we kind of make an all-time Mountain West offense inspired by what we did last week with CSU. Real quick, though, I just wanted to say rest in peace to my good friend Benny Bash. Unfortunately passed away much too young. Benny, genuinely one of the nicest dudes I've ever met in this industry, went out of his way to show support to me when I was an up-and-comer, lifelong Ram fan. So hearts are heavy. My thoughts and prayers certainly go out to his friends and family. And we're going to miss you, bud. We're certainly going to miss you. Tough transition. Never really easy to do those, but I did want to make sure I gave him a shout-out here at the beginning.
You specialize in the tough transitions.
I know. I never know. I'm like, do I do it at the end? But then I worry I'm not going to get it in and all that fun stuff. CSU football, though, they did pick up a transfer this week in Gabe Kirschke, former Wisconsin walk-on out of Valor Christian High School. 6'5", 250 pounds, 35 total tackles, 6 tackles for loss, and 1 sack as a senior. He will play defensive line at CSU, got some reps at outside linebacker at Wisconsin this past spring, was kind of 3rd on their depth chart. Decided to enter the portal. He had an offer from us as well as Utah State, ultimately goes with CSU. Nice depth piece for the defensive line. Yep. I mean, I wouldn't say this is a situation where you want to put too much focus into the program that he's coming from. I think if you be like, oh man, Big Ten transfer, and then just immediately assume that this dude is going to come in and be like a conference player of the year, you maybe just halt your expectations to an extent. When you look at, some of the offers he had out of high school, New Mexico State, Greeley, that type of stuff, ultimately walks on. That said, it's also possible that he was just a late bloomer in a really talented program like Valor Christian. You certainly love the size. You love that you can bring him in. I think he'll be a true defensive end for CSU in the 4-2-5, and we'll kind of see what happens there. You like a frame 6'5", 250 with 3 years to play.
6'5", 250 is really nice. I mean, having six TFLs to your name isn't a bad way to come into things either. And I mean, look, this program's done a really good job of developing some edges around that size,
Got good bloodlines too. His dad played in the NFL for 12 years. Travis won a couple of Super Bowls with Pittsburgh. He was a UDFA that went on to have a decade plus career. So that's, a lot of positive signs. I like guys that come from those situations. Obviously CSU's had some success with guys like that. Jack Howell, another guy who didn't have a ton of big time interest coming out of high school. He's obviously worked out pretty well for CSU, but shout out to Gabe. Welcome to Fort Collins. We're excited to have you back home. Also excited to have Toyota as a sponsor of the podcast. Trucks have always been a part of Toyota's DNA for generations. Toyota's built durable legends destined for greatness and perfect for Colorado. Whether you're conquering off-road trails or hauling the weight of the world, there's a Toyota truck that's just right for you, like the all-new 2024 Tacoma or the return of the iconic 2024 Land Cruiser. Toyota currently offers more low and zero emission vehicles combined than any other automaker to give customers numerous choices to reduce their carbon footprint. 16 different hybrid vehicles to choose from, like the Tundra iForce Max hybrid truck. Not to be outdone, Toyota SUVs take command on the road and on the trail. so you can explore the road less traveled without sacrificing smooth city rides and SUVs like the RAV4 and Grand Highlander. Toyota is a proud partner of CSU Athletics and the official vehicle of DNVR. Also got a ton of love for the Circa Sportsbook. If you have not downloaded it and you are into the sports betting scene, what are you waiting for? What's great about Circa Sportsbet, they don't limit their players once they start winning. A lot of sportsbooks, they see, man, this guy's kind of a sharp. All of a sudden, can only place a $10 wager. Now with Circa, everybody has got the same chances. They're trying to give you the best splits possible, minus 110 versus minus 115, minus 120 at other places. And I don't know about you, Dre, but these days I'm a sucker just for being able to interact with a human being when I have an issue.
It's very nice.
Everything at Circa run by human beings, not chat bots. You're going to get a timely response. Download the app at circasports.com. Circa Sports bets can be made while physically located in the state of Colorado. Must be 21 or older. All rights reserved. Circa Sports Colorado encourages you to gamble responsibly. Gambling problem? Call or text 1-800-GAMBLER or visit problemgamblingcolorado.org. All right, we've got a lot to get into. Shout out to everybody in the comment section. I appreciate you.
Legends.
Riverblade's got a question. What's our O-line looking like this upcoming season? I'm going to go super in depth on that all summer long. That said, I think it's in a good spot. You return 3 of 5 starters. You've got a couple of guys that have been in the system for a year or two now that are up and coming. Really intrigued by Tanner Morley. I think that dude is going to be a stud. So intrigued by him at this point. It's like one of those situations where I'm already getting ahead of myself and trying to be like, we need to make sure we get this guy an NIL package because when he pops this year, he's going to have a ton of big schools in his DMs.
How much eligibility does Tanner have?
4 years. So yeah, he's got a chance to be pretty impactful. 6'7", already over 250 pounds, just a great frame. Dude's a mauler in the run game. I'm really excited. I like Aaron Karras a lot too. For the record, I'm going to go more in depth on the basketball side. I don't want to just kind of jam it in here and have it be a throwaway segment. So keep an eye out on that. I'll get it out tonight if I have enough time to dive into the film and put my notes together. If not, tomorrow at the latest, going to dive into Ethan Morton, Kashawn Williams, and today's transfer edition for CSU men's basketball, Jalen Crocker-Johnson, the OVC freshman of the year.
He's the one you're most excited about?
Him, Jalen Crocker-Johnson. He's just a freaky athlete, big bounce.
Yeah.
And a guy that, I mean, he's only going to put on muscle. He's only going to get tougher. Yeah. I like the idea of bringing him in and hopefully, I mean, you got to hang on to him, obviously, to be able to develop guys, and that's a big question mark in modern college sports. But those guys are really good. And then, Kashawn Williams coming out of Northern Illinois, before he tore his ACL, he's a dude for nearly a 50-game sample size, was averaging about 17 points a game on 45% shooting, can create his shot at all 3 levels, explosive. The big question mark for him, obviously, is just what is your health? Because if he was healthy, he would have been starting for a high major this year. And instead, he's basically coming off of not having played significant time in 18 months. We'll see what happens there. Again, we're going to do a ton of basketball talk in the coming days. I don't want it to be thrown away, but just kind of giving the audience an idea, and my guy Dre, who I'm always keeping up to date with things. Basically, right now, you have added a veteran guard that is capable of running the floor, and Kashawn Williams capable of creating for himself, but also capable of just kind of being the 2 guard and being a guy that scores for you. They've added a defensive specialist, and Ethan Morton comes over 6'6", can be I don't remember if you remember Adam Thistlewood from a couple years ago, but not going to be the star of the show, but he can stretch the floor a little bit. A little bit better athlete than Adam, can get to the hoop a little bit better, isn't going to be bullied defensively. And then, like I said, now you've got Jalen Crocker-Johnson, who I would compare, from what I've seen, I need to dive more into his game, is kind of going to be like that Joel Scott type role down low.
Thistlewood had like an open, great look from 3 that stuck with me for a long time. Where it was like, that was your shot, buddy. I need you to make that.
And that's the thing about a guy like Morton is when you look at the numbers, they're not great, especially this past year. It was like 22% from 3. His number, guy that was north of 40% as a sophomore, though. So you're hoping you can kind of
get back to that,
revitalize him. And I mean, we saw that with Nate Clifford. He really struggled his junior year.
Yeah,
would have gotten buried in the rotation had he gone back to CU. Morton stays for his 4th year, basically sees all his minutes go out of the picture, which makes sense. I mean, Purdue's one of the top 2 or 3 teams in the country all year long. I think if nothing else, just having that defensive presence, especially when you're losing Josiah Strong and Neat Clifford, having a guy that you can put on a wing outside, put on a bigger guard or a smaller forward, and just be confident that he's going to stay in front of him, contest his shots, not put you in a bad spot. That's a huge win because you're going to be relying a lot on guys like Kyan Evans and Rashawn Bemba, who you are really excited about, but they're sophomores going into much larger roles, and there's going to be some lumps with that.
Yeah. And also, just having more bodies to throw, wing depth is so huge in modern basketball.
Huge. Excuse me, as my guy
Swing
Crackers
forward,
College Hoop says, another guard is imminent. I'm big on not spoiling kids' moments. I'm sure Steve knows who it is as well. We'll just say the Midwest has been very kind to CSU this cycle. Keep an eye on Ali Farouk-Manesh's alma mater. I'll just say that. There's enough hints for you.
Oh.
All right, let's get into this NFL draft stuff because I know it's been a little bit of time now. We've had a chance to sit with it. I've kind of given some of my thoughts on the fit with Mo and the Dolphins and all that, but I wanted to pick your brain on this because obviously we had been evaluating him for years. We're following the process. Guys like Brian Baldinger, guys like Daniel Jeremiah, they're just raving about him. They're raving about his production. They're raving about his motor. They're raving about his RAS scores. He falls to day 3, which felt shocking to me. On top of that, not only that, a 5th-round pick, not even a 4th-round pick. Mm-hmm. I could see a world in which he slipped out of the 3rd and went early 4, but for him to fall the way that he did in the 5th round, it was pretty surprising to me. I guess just what was your reaction to all of that, and why would you estimate that it happened?
I think a lot of it came down to size. Now, with a caveat, because there are other edge rushers whose biggest question mark was size, who still went pretty high. And he really compared pretty favorably to us to Jonah Ellis, the Broncos edge rusher that was drafted in the 3rd round, 76th overall. Very high-end production, similar size, elite testing at the combine and pro days. So, just checked off a lot of those boxes, probably more of a stand-up edge. I think what Mo got hurt by was the size. There are probably fewer 3-4 teams. So I think he is a stand-up edge rusher in the NFL. That probably limited his,
less
options.
fits.
And then honestly, just looking at the top of the draft, it was very Power 5 dominated. And I think this is a bit of a scene, and we see the draft is a great way to see the direction the sport's moving in and stuff, right? I think we are starting to see a bit fewer of those G5 or even FCS gems in the draft because those guys a lot of times are making that transfer to
they're
a
just
Power
playing
5
somewhere else
before then making that jump.
Well, and I mentioned that even with the Mountain West. The Mountain West only had 2 draft picks this year, which on paper, not a good look. They're both day 3 picks.
Kind of feels unheard of, though, in years past, Justin.
Well, and that's the thing is I was trying to wonder to myself, is this the future? Is this just what it's going to be? Do we have enough of a sample size to draw those type of conclusions yet?
Right. Was it just this year? Or is this it'll correct itself, or is this a trend to continue?
Well, and the weird thing is some of it's going to be like a school by school basis. Yes, the NFL or the Mountain West only had 2 picks. They had 3 other guys who played the majority of their careers in Mountain West schools and then transferred and ended up getting drafted. Solomon Byrd started at Wyoming, the edge rusher. He gets drafted out of USC. Patrick McMorris was a stud at San Diego State for 3 years. Had an okay year at Cal, and he ended up going in the 5th or the 6th. There's a couple of these guys. But the other factor that you have to put in, I think you could look at it and be like, man, NIL, transfer portal, this is the end of it for the Mountain West. They're not going to have any guys drafted. At the same time, it is keeping some of these guys longer. In different draft cycles, Ashton Gianti and Torrey Horton both just go pro this year. And both of those guys probably go in the first 4 rounds. And you're feeling a lot better about, oh man, like, all right, like, yes, maybe not quite as many guys as we were hoping. You know, you're hoping a guy like Dallin Holker maybe gets drafted day 3, a Frank Crum out of Wyoming. There were a couple of guys who were really fringe and could have gone either way, and they slip out.
Frank Crum not getting drafted is pretty surprising, frankly.
That was really surprising. I think Frank Crum has a really good chance to be on the week 1 roster.
100%. I mean, the way he tested that size. So I do, and it was just like you look at the guys being drafted, it just seemed more blue bloods and more power 5s than usual.
It definitely did. And I do wonder, like, is this the new normal, or is it just the product of this system where we're at timing wise with a lot of these guys in COVID years who, you know, some of these guys ended up transferring when they would have already. Like, it's this
right
weird period where we kind of have to see like how it plays out these next couple of years. Yeah. My main takeaway and my long-winded point in all this, though, is just that I think we kind of got to wait and see. And I think it would be easy to draw a conclusion when you're not necessarily considering every single factor, like COVID years, like the timing of the 5th year with some of these guys, which they won't have in the future. The fact that guys like Torrey Horton and Ashton Genty came back when in almost every other year they would have gone pro. And there's just a lot of factors to put into that.
So, and I just saw that this year, it just seemed like there was more of a focus on some P5 guys, and I wonder how much that hurt Mo, really. I mean,
I wonder how much it hurts programs and perception moving forward. I mean, if you're a guy like Mo who frankly had opportunities, I mean, he was really honest this summer, which I appreciated. He came back for another year of college football because he wanted to improve his draft position. Yep. He would have been a UDFA this past year. He wanted to prove he could get drafted, and he considered transferring. He did, but he felt like he had a chance in this system with, you know, Jay Norvell and under Freddie Banks to ball out, and he did. Like, he could have had the production. He's the Mountain West Player of the Year, but he still falls to the 5th round. And, you know, you wonder if some of these guys in the future, if they decide, like, you know, maybe I have to go where the attention is. I hope that's not the case.
The other side of the coin is a guy like Quinyon Mitchell's the top cornerback taken, 22nd overall, and Nick Saban's on the broadcast talking about how he was their number 1 transfer target. Well, he stays at Toledo, and he's justified in doing so. He's the first cornerback taken, you know. Another G5 guy that was taken in the top 100, Luke McCaffrey. Nebraska quarterback, he goes the other way, P5 to G5, and then becomes a top 100 guy. Malachi Corley, he just stays at Western Kentucky. He's the first pick of the 3rd round, you know.
I mean, they'll always find you. It's not like you don't have a viable path to the NFL in the Mountain West. I was just disappointed.
If anything, this has given you more paths.
Agreed. It's
You have 2nd and 3rd chances you didn't have
to prove yourself. I mean, shoot, look at the Broncos quarterback who goes 12th overall a couple of years ago. By the way, if you don't subscribe to the Draft Podcast, Dre and I are on that every week. Go check that out. We nerd out on this stuff all year long.
Yeah, absolutely.
We don't do a ton of NFL draft stuff on the Rams pod. Obviously, we have these last couple of weeks just with Mo, but we love to nerd out on this stuff. So check it out if you have any free time. It's a lot of fun. What are your thoughts in terms of the fit with Miami? Because you're going into a fairly deep room. I mean, they signed Shaq Barrett in the offseason. It's only a 1-year contract, but they also have got Bradley Chubb. They've also got Jalen Phillips. Both those guys, though, coming off of significant injuries. And, of course, they draft Chop Robinson in the 1st round.
Yeah.
How does Mo compare to some of these guys? Is there an area where you feel like he has a chance to kind of separate himself? Is there a trait, or, you know, like he could just be a guy that
I don't know. Is Vic Fangio still there?
No, he's not.
And that's an interesting one, because that's where you'd expect more of a classic 3-4. And what's interesting is Mo and Chop Robinson, to me, seem lighter than the other edges they have.
Agreed. And I wonder if they're kind of trying to bring them in as
transition.
Yeah. These are going to be, you know, we're going to bring some speed here off the edge.
We're going to be more
in pressure situations.
Because I almost wonder, like, could Bradley Chubb, Jalen Phillips kind of be your bigger edges, and you have guys like Mo and Chop Robinson playing opposite of them as more your speed rushers and more your specialists in that sense? Because, I mean, But it's a crowded, really talented edge room. It's also an edge room with guys like Jalen Phillips, Shaq Barrett, and Bradley Chubb, who've all dealt with injuries lately. So as soon as a couple of those go down, you're going to have a lot of opportunities.
Well, and some guys that have, is like Chubb, especially a guy who's had a repeated injury history.
Yeah,
so, I mean,
100%.
I think it's easy to be like, oh man, there's no path forward for him to be on the field. But I also think, like you mentioned, him and Chop feel like they wanted something different from what they already had. And two very similar players in Chubb and Phillips. And then Shaq, I would almost put like as a hybrid in between the two, like it kind of do what both of them do.
Right. And I mean, from a greater, like getting past the scheme and who they're competing against, this is a team that should be nursing leads in fourth quarters and can tell its edge rushers to pin their ears back and get after opposing quarterbacks and do some damage. And that's a setting where Mo should fit in quite comfortably.
It's going to be exciting. I mean, they brought in Anthony Weaver at defensive coordinator. I had to look it up. I was drawing a blank. He comes over from Baltimore. But he had spent some time in Houston with J.J. Watt. He's developed a lot of pass rushers. Most of the guys he has had success with have been more of those like true defensive ends, and he has a defensive line coach background, so that makes sense.
Yeah.
I'm interested to see, though. I think it's a situation where he should have a chance to play. From what I've read, kind of one of the things that people nitpicked Fangio, despite the fact that I think a 3-4 would have been a perfect fit for Mo, is that he could at times get a little fixated on his guys and not prioritizing the development of young talent. One of the things that Mike McDaniel and Anthony Weaver talked about, and like when they hired him, was that needs to be our bread and butter. Like that needs to be where we need to live and breathe. I think that's encouraging for a guy like Mo, who, you know, you're hoping to see him get on the field, hoping that they can make the most of it. And you don't want him to get buried by like draft politics or roster politics would be my main concern.
For sure.
You know, you drafted another edge rusher in the first round. You've already committed some money on these guys.
Yeah.
You don't want a situation where just because he's the 5th round guy, he gets buried. At least on paper, it doesn't seem like that's going to happen.
You saw the Mike McDaniel quote about how much he enjoyed watching Mo Kamara dominate. Like really enjoyed watching Mo tape because he got to watch a dominant player. There's a couple other superlatives do it at a place that he holds dear to his heart. It's not a great thing.
Mike McDaniel
he really is such a fantastic human being.
So much hope. And that's such a good transition because Mike McDaniel, obviously an Aurora native, Colorado guy, has got a lot of CSU Rams love. He's growing up in the heart of the Sonny Lubick era, back when college football in the state was at its peak with CSU and CU. Dallin Holker, another CSU Ram, signs with the Saints.
Yep.
He lands with Clint Kubiak at offensive coordinator. The Kubiaks have been better to Rams in the NFL than just about anybody. I mean, it was like the Steelers with Higgins and Joey Porter back in the day. And then Houston. I mean, Dreesen and David Anderson. He gave everybody a chance, multiple O-linemen.
I remember that first pro day of CSU's that I attended where you and I don't know that we even chatted that day, but we met. We were in the same room at the same time. I know that much. And Clint was there as well, and he's the Broncos representative at those CSU pro days. And amazing to see how he's moved up and now has the charge of OC here for New Orleans, and how he will figure out how to fit Dallin Holker into all that. And as you pointed out, some intriguing opportunity here with the Saints, where really only Juwan Johnson to compete against right now.
I really like the opportunity for both Dallin Holker and Chigozie Anusiem, who signs with the Commanders. Both guys were certainly in that potential day 3 range. Like you could see a team falling in love and taking them in the 4th or 5th, probably more realistically expected to go in the 6th and the 7th. They fall. I think they land in good spots for a variety of reasons. I mean, the staff on both sides, I think, is potentially going to be beneficial. New Orleans just having Clint Kubiak, and it's easy for me to be like, Kubiak's love Rams. Clint Kubiak obviously played at CSU. They have the background. But I think what matters a hell of a lot more is when you look at how have tight ends fared in systems where Clint Kubiak was a part of the offense. And, you look at what he did when he was the OC in Minnesota. Like, they had really good production out of Tyler Conklin, 61 catches for almost 600 yards, 3 touchdowns. He then goes to the Broncos, and although that offense was terrible, Greg Dulcich was the third leading receiver as a tight end. He goes to San Francisco. You have a tight end who produces over 1,000 yards. Like I like Dallin's opportunity here to go into a system where even though he's an undrafted free agent, he's going to have a staff that's probably watched him play quite a bit, just given the CSU ties, believes in him.
Yeah.
A system that is inherently friendly to tight ends, and a roster that frankly needs a boost in talent at the position.
For sure. And it's not like you're in Miami, for example, where maybe there's opportunity at tight end, but it's like, look, those offensive touches, they're going to go to the running backs. They're going to go to the wide receivers.
That's a huge factor as well. Like, I mean, I know they've got Olave and like you're hoping, but
yeah, and Kamara.
Right?
But still, it's not this loaded skill position group.
No, and for like a pass catching tight end like Dallin, it feels like the perfect opportunity to where it's like, I can just get this guy on the field because I know he's going to move the sticks. I know he's going to get open and we're going to keep the drive alive. I know I can target him in the red zone. Is he going to be a mauler out there? No, I don't think they're going to be running stretch plays behind him, on the edge there. But
that's exactly right.
I think it's a nice opportunity. And then off of everything else, Derek Carr, a quarterback. And sometimes I think we put too much stock into this because I think it's like there are just so many factors you might overlook, like what type of tight end did you have on the roster, who's your OC, all that. But in 6 out of his first 8 years, in 6 of his first 8 years with the Raiders, he had a tight end with 50 plus catches. 3 times the tight end was a leading receiver. So he likes having that safety blanket over the middle. And us as Broncos fans, we remember that because Darren Waller ate our ass up for that didn't come out right, but you know what I mean.
100%. Ate our ass up works better than ate our ass. So you've got that going for us. That was actually sounds better than what actually happened on the field. Of the 3 tight ends you brought up, Conklin, Kittle, and Greg Dulcich, I would say Dallin probably resembles Dulcich the most.
Agreed.
A bit more of
which is also why I didn't think he was going to end up in Denver, despite the fact I think he would have been a pretty good fit with the Sean Payton offense. They already have it.
So, that kind of that receiver flex guy, can you use him creatively? Can you get him out in space? He might surprise you with his hands and ability to get open and run after the catch ability.
I'm with you. He's got deceptive wiggle to him in the open field. Like you see the safety coming in on him. He's got an angle, and Dallin just kind of slips him and goes for an extra 8.
It's very Dulcich-esque.
He moves well. It's why I really thought he was going to get drafted. That said, honestly, sometimes being a UDFA is better than getting drafted in the 7th round because you get to pick your fit, and a lot of the times you get more guaranteed money.
It's so much better.
Real quick, I do want to shout out our friends over at Breckenridge Brewery. It's been a long day. I could use a Breck brew. They have got some new stuff in the works. I'm really excited. They've got the new West Coast style IPA, Ridge Runner. It's a double dry hopped brew inspired by the untamed beauty of Colorado's trails. Hopback infused with whole cone hops and a double dose of citralupulin. I cannot pronounce that word to save my life. Citralupulin powder creates notes of bright citrus and pine. Breckenridge Brewery, of course, the official craft beer of DNVR. They've been with us since day one. I cannot say enough good things about Breck. We had a blast there during our NFL draft show last week. I'm there pretty frequently. So if you want to ever run into your guy, Jay might come down to the Breck Brewery. Check out the Breck Beer locator at breckbrew.com and get a brew near you.
Yeah.
Also, DNVR events. We've got a lot of stuff going on.
Oof. Golf coming up.
Yeah, tomorrow.
Watch parties galore. Nuggets, Avs. I have to get here this weekend to watch some Nugs and Avs. Last week was too crazy. This week I got to do it.
Well, I mean, between the draft and everything else going on, it was intense. But we got a Rockies takeover coming up. I know the Rockies are terrible, but there's still nothing better than having an ice cold beer in the sunshine. And when you're with your friends, I mean, it's awesome. Follow our social. DNVR_sports, or go to thednvr.com/events. Keep up with all things DNVR.
Yeah, it's a great deal.
Chigozie Anusiem, 6'1", 200-pound cornerback, played the last 2 years at CSU, came over from Cal. He ends up signing with the Commanders, another guy who is, again, kind of fringe in terms of where he was projected in the draft. That said, I think he has a really nice opportunity to make a roster, potentially even week 1, and I really like his fit with Dan Quinn because he's got the length and the speed and the size, and he kind of reminds me of some of those Seattle corners back in the day. Now, I'm interested to see, like, is that what Dan does in Washington? Because in Dallas, it's a lot more man. They're blitzing a lot more. It wasn't really what he did in Seattle, and I don't know if I like Chiggy's fit in that quite as much, although he did play a lot of man at CSU, so I'm not saying he can't do it. I like his potential, though, if they go into those old school Seahawks roots of being a lanky guy that can come forward, make plays for you. He's not scared to make a tackle, good size. And, you know, like, I don't think he's going to be a guy that gets 8 interceptions for you, but just a guy that you trust to not get burned.
Yeah, and I do think even with Dallas, they were playing more of that like deep sideline zone coverage, and that's where Diggs is kind of living, you know. So it might be cover 2 or more man, but it still has the feel of that where you need a lengthy corner who has some ball skills, some physicality to his game. Man, what really stood out to me, I mean, kind of shocked me, frankly, is Anusiem got $300,000 base salary and $50,000 bonus. From what I could tell, he was the highest paid. That was the most lucrative undrafted free agent deal that was signed over the weekend.
I'm with you. I didn't say that because I didn't want to tweet it and then somebody come in and be like, actually, so-and-so got.
Yeah.
I spent about 40 minutes trying to go through UDFA deals and see if I could find a better one.
The 2 big Broncos
My man got
ones,
paid.
Blake Martinez from Memphis, Watson. Blake Martinez is the old Stanford linebacker, and Frank Crum both got half the signing bonus, so $25K instead of $50 and $250 instead of $300K. And from what I was seeing, those were like tied for the second most lucrative.
That says something, though. Like, you don't drop that kind of cash without having a plan for a guy and assuming that he is going to be at the very least in the mix in preseason.
100%. And if you cut him, you actually do lose that bonus money. So that is a financial decision you do have to make. And look, the Commanders just made a really massive draft. They drafted over 10 guys. So that they would feel this strongly about Anusiem to bring him in and add him to the rookie class as well, I think speaks volumes. And yeah, we had a lot of expectations for him coming into the season. I think lived up to it for the most part.
He was fine. I mean, the defense as a whole just did not produce the way that we hoped it would, particularly the secondary this past year, but they came together as the year went on. And I mean, I think the biggest selling point for a guy like Chiggy is just that, like, he's not the big play corner, but he's not the corner that is typically going to be giving up big plays either. Like, he's not going to get a pick 6. He has 1 interception his entire career. Doesn't have a ton of pass deflections even, but he can stick to a guy. He's a guy that a lot of the times they're not even throwing that way.
That's exactly right. He's reliable. He checks off a lot of boxes, even though maybe there's not a high-end trait that I feel really incredible about.
Could you see him going to safety maybe? I noticed in his NFL draft evaluation, Lance Zierlein of the NFL.com mentioned that could be a strong selling point for him as well.
Closer to the line or more as a deep safety, do you think?
That's where I was going back and forth.
He makes way more sense as a boundary corner, a cover 3 press guy to me, right?
Me too. I could maybe see him being that deep,
but maybe
free.
Deeper.
Yeah, I don't really see him being a guy like coming up and destroying your run game.
What you just described, like, he's not going to make a ton of plays on the ball, but he's like a reliable cover defender. Reliable last line of defense is priority 1 for me when I'm looking for a deep safety, right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't need you to be
we don't need
some
Ed Reed
mismatch eraser, right? I just need a reliable last line of defense. That's kind of the job. So Anusiem might have the acumen and football personality and IQ to fit that role. He does feel like a much more logical fit, though, as an outside corner.
I'm glad you said that. I put it in there just because I read it and I wanted to pick your brain on it,
It's
but I was like, I don't know if I see that.
And they got one of those hybrid type corner safeties from the Illini defense that they drafted top 50 last year.
If I had to put a knife to your back, you are a betting man. I'll just do it that way. You're a betting man.
Oh, yeah.
How many Rams out of these 3, we don't have to like factor, Adam Prentice is a fullback for the Saints and all that. Out of these 3, How many will be on week 1 rosters? Mo's going to be on the week 1 roster, assuming he's healthy. But do 2 out of 3? Would you take if I said it at 1.5? Would you take the over?
I'd take the over. And I tell you what,
I kind of like all 3.
Might be Anusiem, not Holker.
I actually think you're
Who's
right.
that second spot? Might be.
And I don't think they'll move on from Holker. I think it could be a situation where it's like he's a practice squad for a year, and then you kind of play your way into the system.
Though I love the situation.
I do too.
I love the situation. But dude, those bonuses speak volumes.
No, it's these are the things you need to be paying attention to when it comes to like making projections in terms of how do NFL teams truly feel about this guy. It's not a guarantee. There's no guarantees. He's got to go prove it. But I mean, when you make that type of financial commitment, much like when you draft a guy high, you are just much more likely to give them multiple opportunities. It's easier to cut the guy who you don't owe the money to. It's just the reality.
Yeah, no doubt about it.
We're going to get out of here in a couple of minutes. I did want to have a little bit of fun at the end. We're going to draft an all-time Mountain West offense. We did it with CSU guys from the 21st century last week. Very predictably, the first 15 responses I got were, what about this guy who played in 1975? Again, we called it. We were sticking in the 21st century. It doesn't mean I don't value theirs. It was just for the sake of discussion. I've already talked about all of the legends before, but take a quick breath real quick. Just take a breather, center ourselves. And then I want to throw a couple of CSU-inspired Kentucky Derby names for you. It's this weekend.
It is.
I've never been much of a horse racing guy, but there's something about the Derby and
it's fun.
The prestige of it. Like I do too. That's what I mean. Like I don't really watch the other ones, but there's just something about the Derby that feels different. I want you to tell me what the best one is.
Yeah, let's
give me some feedback in the comment section. These are my CSU-themed Kentucky Derby names. Stalwart Stallion.
It's pretty good.
Rolls off the tongue. You could also just go Stalwart.
Yeah, Stalwart. I was going to say Stalwart Stallion might be a bit too on the money. Stalwart, that's got a nice ring to it.
I like it. Stalwart. Proud to be.
Actually, proud. That really has
That's my favorite.
I mean, that coming down the stretch.
Proud to be.
I'm proud to be. It's coming down the stretch. Proud to be. That sounds amazing.
It rolls off the tongue. Incredible. Holy Holker, inspired by the Hail Mary to beat Boise State, one of the most exciting moments of the last 5 years.
Holker in general is a good horse name, and Holy Holker is fun.
Holker works. I wanted to commemorate the moment.
No, you should, and I think the two-worder is better, and it's a nice commemorates the moment. Yeah, for sure.
Moby Madness. Not a fan. I can see that one.
I love it. I love Moby Madness.
Just not as a horse name.
As a horse name, I don't think it hits.
Last but not least, we've got Sonny's Money. And of course, Sonny spelled like Sonny Lubick.
Sonny's Money slaps. That one's really good.
I think that or Proud to Be have got to be the winner.
Proud to Be would be so fun to hear down the stretch.
It'd be super cool. If I'm ever a billionaire, I'll probably have a horse named Proud to Be.
That'd be dope.
Just for the flex of it.
Maybe Jokic in a decade or so in retirement can do something like that for us.
Nicola, let's go to Fort Collins.
Yeah, come on.
Let me get you on the oval.
Uh-huh.
You're going to be feeling proud to be by the end of the day. Yep. I'm telling you.
Yeah.
Before we get out of here, let's draft an all-time Mountain West offense. We're just going to have some fun with it. This is not that deep. There's always guys after the fact where I'm like, damn it. How did I not think about this?
Yeah.
You're my guest. I believe it's your turn for the first pick. Or no, I think maybe you had it doesn't matter. You have the first pick.
Yeah, this would be 2 drafts in a row. I got the first pick. I definitely took BVP with the first pick overall. And the last one...
So, all right, so I'll put it like this. I'll give you the option. Do you want to take the first pick again, or do you want to defer? You're going to kick off? Or,
I'll defer.
Make it hard on me?
Yeah.
All right. At quarterback, with the first overall pick of the All Mountain West offense, J-Mike selects Kellen Moore, quarterback, Boise State.
Ooh, that's a good one. I've got a few questions.
Let's hit him.
Will you allow Alex Smith?
Yes, I meant to explain that before the beginning.
Good.
Anybody that played in the Mountain West is eligible. Now, that means if they played at
Famous
Utah while
Mountain
in the
West
Mountain West,
quarterback.
then they're good. Now, if it's Pac-12 era, you don't qualify. Same deal with schools like BYU, TCU. If you're in the Mountain West, you qualify. That's where it gets kind of complicated with some of these guys.
I know it does. First overall, obviously, when that helps a lot. Part of me does want to go Jared Zabransky.
Name brand is up there.
So legendary cover of the college football game.
Over Josh Allen, though? And that's the question, too. Do you go with what they actually did in college? Or Josh Allen in college versus Josh Allen in Buffalo Bills are two different quarterbacks.
They are. And Josh Allen was so fun.
Alex Smith, a top 5 pick.
Honestly, Derek Carr is probably my favorite Mountain West quarterback.
Statistically speaking, probably the biggest numbers.
Yeah, give me Derek Carr.
It's a really good pick.
Yeah, I mean, what can I say? I'm gonna go Rashard Hollywood Higgins as my wide receiver here.
I like that pick for multiple reasons. One, he is truly one of the most skilled and productive wide receivers to ever be in the league. Two, we need some CSU love for the brownie points. We got to know our audience in these situations. I'm actually going to play off of your pick with Derek Carr and take his receiver and go Devontae Adams.
That's a really good one. You have back-to-back picks now.
I do, and that's where we go to the tight end position, and I take Trey McBride, the best tight end that I have seen play in the Mountain West.
Wow. That's good.
I like that value of getting Adams and McBride back-to-back. I feel pretty good about that.
Yeah, as you should. I need to get in on some running backs here. I'm going to go Jay Ajayi. Donnell Pumphrey would be in the mix. Brian Hill was great back in the day. But Jay Ajayi is who I'd want.
I watched that dude
that's the other
all
thing.
over CSU in Fort Collins in 2014.
Legendary games.
It was a long ass night. I will say that. That was the game CSU was in too. They were up 10 points at one point. Classic just could not stop him. The best athlete on the field. Honestly, a guy I'm surprised didn't have a little bit more success in the NFL than he did.
Me too, but obviously injuries were a big part of that.
Yeah, and as is the case with anybody. And in those spots, running back is tough. You got who I was hoping to steal late.
Yeah.
The tough part is you want to be like LaDainian Tomlinson, but he didn't play in the Mountain West, despite the fact that he played for TC. San
Diego. Right.
You got to have some nuance. Man.
And the same would be like Marshall Falk.
That's what I mean. At San Diego State,
currently
but that's the WAC
West school, but he was in the WAC.
And you got to remember that all the CSU fans, guys from the 80s and 90s, they're not eligible until 98, 99 because they were in the WAC, not the Mountain West. Only had 1 year, maybe not have enough of sample size, but I'm going to go Capri Bibbs. Capri Bibbs at running back. I just think what he did that season, if I can have him with a ripper of a quarterback and some nice receivers, I'm going to take my chances.
That's fair.
Now, do I go receiver or flex? For the flex, you can do running back, tight end, or wide receiver. It's dealer's choice.
Man, it's tough.
I'm trying to go through these names off the top of my head and make sure I'm not missing anybody super obvious.
What's crazy is with wide receiver, it's so Rams heavy.
Oh yeah, you can make an argument for Gallup, Torrey Horton, any of these guys really. Preston Williams, if you want to talk just pure raw talent.
No, I think I'll take Michael Gallup as my wide receiver. And then I guess it's me with the flex.
Yep.
Give me Donnell Pumphrey.
That's such a good pick.
I know, and honestly, I almost regret it instantly because Ronnie Hillman was a real consideration, but Pumphrey was.
Pumphrey had the numbers.
He's also the better flex, like pure flex in real football.
No, he's a pass catcher. You get him as a punt returner and specialty. I mean, there's a lot to like about that situation. I'm gonna go. Yeah, it is Ram heavy. I'm just like, who am I missing at receivers?
I know.
I mean, you could go with somebody like Romeo Dubs out of Nevada. But like, I'd rather have Torrey than him.
Cedric Wilson had a decent career.
He had a good year.
Who's there? Devin Tompkins is pretty high
Tompkins
on the
at Utah State
list.
had a nice little run there. I'm gonna go Torrey Horton though, because you get double Mountain West representation with Nevada and CSU. I'm gonna say that gives him the edge over
Stock
Gallup.
could still be up too.
And yeah, I mean, he could potentially end up leaving. And then with my flex pick, man,
give it to us.
I'm trying. Okay, I'm drawing a blank.
I know. Do you go running back, tight end? Are there more tight ends we're not thinking of that we've left on the table? Cole Turner?
Cole Turner had a nice little run there. I feel like I'd rather take one of those receivers though, if I'm really like, if it really came down to it, you know. I'm gonna go. I wanted to represent more of the league than I did on this, but oh well. Let's just go. Let's keep it simple, and we'll go Michael Gallup and just say he deserves to be represented.
I have Gallup.
That you do. So I can't take him. So we'll go Cole Turner.
Ronnie Hillman. Cole Turner's a good one.
I like the size. Give me a red zone option. Stretch the seam with him.
That's fun. That's fun. Stylistically, we have two nice
Next
teams.
time I'll make a bank of players, which will be a lot easier for this. Yeah, you need a tight end. You could go any of the CSU tight ends.
I didn't go tight end yet. Dreesen would count?
Dreesen would count. So would Gilmore.
I know. I went Crockett in the last draft. Give me Dreesen in this one.
I will say it is kind of depressing
Cole Turner to you
when you go year by year and you realize how many times CSU has had arguably the top skill guy in the last 15 years.
It's crazy.
And the lack of success that it's translated to.
I swear it applies defensively in some years too.
Yeah, I mean, Shaq Barrett, Mo Kamara, like they have had legitimate NFL talent on both sides of the ball.
It's nuts, man.
Hope it finally turns.
Yeah.
This is fun. All right, so in recap, I ended up with Kellen Moore at quarterback, Capri in the backfield, Devontae Adams, Torrey Horton out wide, as well as Trey McBride and Cole Turner as my tight ends. Dre ends up with Derek Carr at quarterback, Jay Ajayi in the backfield. I think Ajayi is actually Ajay. I spelled that wrong. Anyways, Rashard Higgins, Michael Gallup, Joel Dreesen, and Donnell Pumphrey. Ajayi with an I at the end instead of an E. That was my fault, Tiff. This was a lot of fun. I'm interested to see how the internet thinks we're idiots for this one.
Oh, I thought the other comments were fine last week. We were looking good.
No, it's fine. It's just how these things work. Like
It does. I mean, here's what I would say is before you comment, listen to the segment. Pop on. Tiff's going to put the timestamps for you. Listen to the segment and then argue with us.
Come up with a conclusion. And you realize, especially when you're drafting back and forth, it's a little bit harder than just putting a list together. Like there are times guys are going to go that you wanted. Anyways, this was a lot of fun. We'll have tons of basketball content coming up in the next couple of days. This roster really starting to come together for Nico Medved. Had no transfer commits at the beginning of the week. Now I have 3 public, I believe 4 private. I already have an article up breaking down kind of what you can expect from Ethan Morton as well as Kashawn Williams. Going to dive much more into Jalen Crocker-Johnson tonight, big-time transfer commit for CSU. Dre, thank you so much for doing this. Tiff, thank you for making this happen. The people in the comment section, much love. I appreciate you always rocking with us. We're always proud to be. Much love, y'all. Peace.
We all silly like the mayor.